kind of football do you actually love watching? Because PSG against Bayern didn't just give us a football match.
What an amazing game, entertaining from start to finish.
It gave us a question, a 5-4 game, 9 goals, elite attackers everywhere, 2 teams refusing to slow down. And somehow, instead of everyone agreeing that we had just watched something special, football split itself in half. Some people called it one of the greatest matches they had ever seen. Others looked at the same game and called it chaos.
Tonight we have plenty of risks. Situation.
No defending, no control, TikTok football. And when someone like Thierry Henry says something like that, it carries weight. He is not just some random voice online, he is one of the greatest forwards the game has ever seen. So when he questions a match like this, people listen. But this is where the debate becomes interesting, because it is completely fair to say you didn't enjoy PSG versus Bayern. Football is taste. Some people love structure, some people love defensive discipline, some people love slow control, perfect spacing, and teams that protect every detail. Because PSG versus Bayern wasn't just a broken game with 9 goals, it was the product of 2 teams choosing to play football without fear. And that is why this match divided people so much. For me, this was one of the best matches I have ever watched. Maybe memory makes recent games feel bigger than they are. Maybe a few years from now we will place it differently. But in terms of attacking quality, coaching ideas, individual class, risk, transitions, and pure emotional chaos, this game belongs in that conversation. You can mention Barcelona's comeback against PSG. You can mention France against Argentina in the World Cup final. You can mention Istanbul. You can mention those insane Champions League nights where the game stops being normal and turns into something else. But PSG versus Bayern had something very specific. It was not just drama, it was a clash of football beliefs. Because Bayern came to Paris with an insane attack. Michael Olise, Harry Kane, Luis Diaz, players who can destroy you from one mistake. Their forward line was frightening, but the deeper you went into Bayern's team, the more the picture changed. The attack was elite, the midfield was good, but the defense was where the cracks started to appear, and PSG were built in the opposite way. They had danger in attack, of course, Dembélé, Kvaratskhelia, Doué, players who can create panic in 1-versus-1 situations. But the real reason PSG looked so powerful was not only the attack, it was the midfield. Vitinha, Fabian Ruiz, João Neves. That is the core of this team. That is where the game starts. That is where PSG become PSG, and this is why I look at them differently. The best attack in the world might beat the best defense in one moment. But the best teams are usually built through midfield. The teams that dominate eras are the teams that control the center of the pitch. That was Guardiola's Barcelona. Yes, they had Messi, and when you have the greatest player of all time, everything changes. But the reason that team-controlled football was the midfield. Xavi, Iniesta, Busquets. They didn't just play passes, they decided the rhythm of the entire sport. And PSG are not that team. Nobody is saying that. But the principle is similar. This PSG is dangerous because the middle of the pitch gives the rest of the team meaning. Vitinha does not just pass the ball, he gives PSG their temperature. When they need calm, he slows the game. When they need speed, he opens the pitch. When Kvaratskhelia or Dembélé need to attack 1-versus-1, Vitinha is often the player who gives them the ball at the exact moment where the defender is already in trouble. That is why the argument that this was just chaos misses the point. PSG were not randomly attacking, they were using their midfield to release their weapons, and Bayern, because of how they play, gave them chances to do that. Stanisic looked like a problem, Bayern's defensive side looked vulnerable, and when PSG managed to isolate their wide players, Bayern started suffering. But Bayern also gave PSG problems for the exact same reason. They did not come to survive, they came to attack. Olise had moments where he looked unplayable, and yes, there were defensive errors. You cannot let a player like Olise receive the ball, move inside, and shoot without a real block. At this level, that is a scandal. But then again, look who he was attacking. Nuno Mendes is arguably the best left-back in the world, and even he had moments where Olise made him look ordinary. That tells you this was not only bad defending. Sometimes the attacker is just that good. Sometimes the speed of the match forces defenders into impossible decisions. That is the part people forget. When elite players attack at this pace, defenders are not just defending space. They are defending perfection. One wrong step, one late reaction, 1 second of hesitation, and the whole action collapses. The same thing happened for Kvaratskhelia goal. Bayern's defense reacted badly. The line was exposed, the space was too big, but Kvaratskhelia still had to punish it. And for me, he was the man of the match. Not Dembele, not Kane. Kvaratskhelia. Because every time he entered the game, something changed. Some players receive the ball, and you wait to see what they will do. Kvaratskhelia receives the ball, and the defender already looks uncomfortable. He plays with that strange mix of calm and violence, like he is not rushing, but the whole defense is. And that is what made PSG so dangerous. Their midfield created the platform, and their attackers had the freedom to hurt Bayern in space. But then came the part that made this game unforgettable. At 5-2, most teams would have been finished. The tie would feel dead. The stadium would start thinking about the next round. People would start imagining PSG in the final. But Bayern did not accept that. They did not stop. They did not defend the embarrassment. They did not say, let's just keep this respectable. They kept attacking. And suddenly, from 5-2, it became 5-4. That is Bayern's identity. That is their DNA. They do not wait for you to show them their weaknesses. They attack you anyway. And in the 90th minute, they were not protecting a one-goal defeat. They were still trying to make it 5-5 in Paris. That is why this match was special, because both teams had a reason to stop, and neither of them did. PSG could have slowed the game down at 5-2. Luis Enrique could have told them to take longer on throw-ins, kill the rhythm, recycle the ball, force Bayern to run without giving them transitions. He could have turned the last part of the match into management, and maybe he should have. That is the tactical question, because if PSG somehow go out later, people will come back to that moment. They will say, at 5-2, you had the tie in your hands. You had the chance to make the game boring. You had the chance to put the match in a cage. But PSG didn't do it. Maybe because Luis Enrique felt Bayern were too open. Maybe because he saw the chance for 6-2. Maybe because this PSG is not built to protect itself by hiding. Maybe they protect themselves by threatening you again. That is a dangerous way to live, but it is also why they are so hard to play against. And this is where the comparison with Arsenal becomes interesting. Arsenal are almost the opposite debate. Arteta has built a team with structure, control, defensive responsibility, set-piece value, and patience. And that is completely legitimate. If Arsenal win the Champions League playing that way, you take your hat off. Football is not only about beauty, football is about winning. But the problem some people have with Arsenal is not just beauty, it is rhythm. People confuse rhythm and tempo. Tempo is the speed of the game. Rhythm is how the ball moves, how quickly a team restarts, how much life the game has between actions. Arsenal can play in a slow rhythm. They can take time on throw-ins. They can make the game feel controlled, heavy and protected. And again, that can win trophies. But when you watch PSG and Bayern, you are watching something else. There was even a stat after the game that the average throw-in restart in PSG versus Bayern was faster than every Premier League match this season. That tells you something. This was not just two teams attacking. This was two teams refusing to let the match breathe. No dead time, no comfort, no long pauses, no hiding. And that is why calling it TikTok football feels lazy. Because this was not a cheap product made for children who only watch highlights. This was the result of two teams with real philosophies. PSG have a midfield that wants to control through aggression. Bayern have an attack that wants to punish you constantly. Both teams had already handled their domestic leagues enough to keep their main players fresh. Both teams had the physical reserve to run for 90 minutes. Both teams had the quality to turn space into goals. So when they met, we got exactly what should happen when two fearless teams collide. A football fight. Not fake football. A fight. And yes, if 4 defenders had been in the perfect position 4 different times, maybe we would have had 4 fewer goals. Maybe then people would call it serious football. Maybe then it would be accepted as tactically mature. But is that really what we wanted? A 1-to-1 where everyone says both teams respected the occasion? Or a match where Elise is attacking Nuno Mendes like he has no fear? Kvaratskhelia is ripping through Bayern's line, Vitinha is passing like he is playing with a remote control, and Bayern are still chasing 5-5 in the final minutes. This is the strange part of modern football culture. We ask for intensity, then complain when it becomes too intense. We ask for entertainment, then call it unserious when the game gives us too much of it. We criticize teams for being safe, then criticize them again when they take risks. And this match exposed that contradiction perfectly. And whether you loved it or hated it, you watched it, you felt it, and you will remember it.